to Mediation, the New Possibilities Hour. Today is October 8th, 2020, and we're here with our special guest, Sasha Strauss, founder of Innovation Protocol. We are part of the Will Work for Food project. There's no charge for these great webinars. Rather, we ask you to contribute to a food bank if you like what you see. We've been doing this since May, Natalie, and the viewers and listeners have been so generous with food banks. We always acknowledge them by giving a running total of how much we've raised so far for food banks all around the world. Would you give us our weekly update, please?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks very much. Listen, once again, this week, I'm so incredibly proud of our industry. Jeff, we've put together for food banks worldwide 55,600 and change.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. The legal and alternative dispute resolution communities are so generous, and Natalie, so wonderful that you organized this great project. So thank you very much, and thanks to all of our donors.
And thank you for being a generous moderator.
You're very welcome. Happy to do it. Well, our guest today is Sasha Strauss. He is the founder of Innovation Protocol, a full-service strategic brand consulting and design firm. He's an incredible expert on the topic. His client list includes incredible companies like Google, PayPal, Lego, DoorDash, Nestle, and also some other companies like Jeff Kitchaven Commercial Mediation. And that's how we got to know each other. I first got to know Sasha through his company's incredible work for the Los Angeles County Bar Association. I know that I personally have benefited tremendously not only from Sasha's professional advice, but also from his friendship over a period of many, many years. So Sasha, we'll give you the floor. If there's a food bank that you would like to mention and encourage that people support, we welcome that. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jeff, Natalie. Appreciate you having me. Hey folks, I'm here in Los Angeles. I'm honored to be connected with you today. The food bank that I'm going to prefer the donation goes to is called Sova, only because here in Los Angeles, I've experienced them personally. It is an incredibly well-run food bank. Let me give you an example. Decades ago, they negotiated with all of the grocery store franchises and owners in our region to take all of the leftover food or expired food or post-dated food and build it into a seamless process where they put it into bags that day and brought them into the homes of needy people that night. So an amazing organization I'm super proud to support. So that's where I'd like the funding to go.
Great. And Natalie, you'll put the link to Sova up in, it's part of Jewish Family Services of Los Angeles. And they serve everybody in the Los Angeles community, regardless of religion or other demographic characteristics.
Yeah, like a Christian community organization. They're not serving Christians, they're serving the community, but the institution happens to be founded in a faith-based institution.
Beautiful.
Cool. Well, let me kick off our conversation today with all of you. So quickly, the topic is brand strategy. And I respect that you may not have spent much time thinking about it, but I think that you all know that your professional identities matter greatly. They define your career success, the opportunities that come before you. And I, as a brand strategist, work with, as mentioned, corporations and universities and religions, et cetera, helping them define who they are, why they matter, and how that should show up in their daily dialogue. All of that practice, all of the recipes that are used to build brands, build durable connections, those recipes also directly apply to us as individuals. So personal branding, believe it or not, follows much of the same path as commercial branding. Was there a question, Jeff?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay, great. So I'll keep going here. So when I say commercial branding, I don't want you to think exploitive. I don't want you to think, false identity. The truth of the matter is that people won't buy it if they can't comprehend it, can't connect with it, can't understand it. And so branding is really about an inner truth. It's about something about who you are and how you see the world, and therefore taking ownership over that and communicating it directly. I'll give you one example. When Jeff and I were working together years and years and years ago, I hadn't had enough mediation experience to truly understand it. But the way that Jeff spoke, the way that he educated as he sold, that teach, don't sell mentality really helped him build a bond with my coworkers. Folks who had never met mediators before, But because of Jeff's consistent, durable brand identity, they built a connection that endures to this day. The topic, again, is brand strategy as it relates to you as an individual. And because I suspect that you hear the word brand and you start to think about advertising and marketing and public relations, if I may, Jeff, I'd like to just back up for just a second and help you separate those things from one another. If that sounds good, give me a thumbs up, folks, and I'll go ahead and get into that. Great. Okay, perfect. So every one of you has heard of advertising, marketing, and public relations, but the problem is that you probably heard it out of context. So let me back it out and put it into context. People will not hire a mediator they don't know exists. Okay, so first responsibility is to be known. And that known responsibility is an introductory behavior. It's, hi, I'm Sasha, I'm a mediator. Hi, I'm Sasha, I'm a mediator. Okay, that is classically called advertising. And the reason why it's called advertising is because if you think of an ad, think about an ad like in a search engine result or in a magazine. The ad only has so much space, right? It gets like a sentence or two and it needs an image. It's a really simplified outreach. Well, the reason why it's simplified is because advertising, again, your introductory behavior, requires repetition. Even though I want to know and love you, I need to meet you 3 or 4 times before I can have that connection with you. So just in your head, advertising is the action to introduce, and you need to do it over and over and over again to create stickiness. So let's just pretend that you as a mediator, you decide that you want more people to know you, so you're going to invest in advertising. And what that advertising investment is, we can talk about later. I'm trying to compartmentalize it for you. So advertising is the introductory behavior. Okay, perfect. What if someone says, ooh, I really like you. You speak the way I want you to speak. You care the way I want you to care. Tell me more. Well, as soon as someone has migrated from their introductory relationship to you, like, hi, nice to meet you again. Hi, nice to meet you again. And they've converted to say, wow, Chuck, I'm really interested in what you have to say. Well, now the conversation shifts, right? Because if you're still introducing yourself, it'll feel really strange when the person has inquired and said, tell me more. So here's the mental shift, everybody. Once you've moved from introducing yourself and the person says, hi, nice to meet you, tell me more, now you shift into explaining yourself. You see the difference. An explanation, we call it marketing. Marketing is like more information. It's a video, it's a longer dialogue, it's history. And so you get that if advertising enabled you to introduce yourself, marketing gives you the vehicle to explain. And that's what your website does. That's what a sales sheet might do or an explanatory document might do. Those are designed, again, to add more color, more understanding, but not for everybody. So if you think about advertising, you see ads all the time, right? On the side of the road, on the television, you hear them on the radio, and you kind of are not even really paying attention, right? They kind of pass through you. Okay, good. Well, that's the nature of advertising. You're introducing. The person converts and says, hey, I am looking for a mediator. Perfect. Now you have that explanation opportunity, and that is the gift of marketing. Marketing explains. Now, quickly, once someone has heard your explanation and said, Janice, I really like how you explain mediation. I really like how you talk about your work. Okay, perfect. Now they decide that they either want to work for you, they want to hire you, they want to refer you, etc. Well, that's key. They've converted. They have opted in, and so now they are your public. They're your community. They might be your investor, they might be your donor, they might be your client, but you don't want to lose them, right? We all understand that it's so hard to secure a client. Once we have one, we'd like to keep them. Well, that's the action of public relations. Public relations, it's had a lot of different intentions over the years, but let's just call it you staying in relationship with your public. Again, your public might be other attorneys, your public might be other people looking for mediation assistance, but needless to say, the point is simply, when it comes to public relations, it's about sustaining a relationship with your audience. So, advertising introduces, marketing explains, public relations engages. So the key question for all of you today is, what happens when you advertise and you sound like a triangle mediator, but then I get to meet with you and I read your brochure and you sound like a circle mediator, and then I hire you and you act like a square mediator? So you go from circle, triangle to square. What does that feel to you as a human? That incongruity, that inconsistency compromises my trust in you. I start to wonder, like, well, wait, who am I going to get? Who's going to show up at the mediation? What kind of persona will be there? And that's why what we're talking about today, brand strategy, ensures that when you introduce yourself, explain yourself, or engage your audiences, you're doing so in a consistent and strategic way. So I'll pause there just for a second. Again, that was my introduction to where brand strategy fits as it informs advertising, marketing, and public relations. Who's got some feedback or a question? Oh, please, Janice. Yes, thank you for raising your hand. By the way, folks, in Zoom, amazing how we can do this, right? Just raise a hand, cup an ear, whatever the gesture. Go ahead, Janice, please.
I just had to ask, it sounds like then you need to have the brand first so you can weave it into all of these different avenues. Is that the approach?
Yes, and as our therapists say, so yes, technically you would want to have all this built in advance, but you're already working, you're already producing. And so I don't want you to believe you need to stop everything in order to get to this place. But what I will say, Janice, honestly, is as you start doing this work, and I'll give you an example of something to do here in a second, as you start doing this work, it starts informing your behaviors. So let me give you one perfect example, Janice. A key ingredient in brand strategy is competitive analysis. And I don't want you to be offended by the notion of competitive analysis. I want you to be inspired by it. The idea that you can follow other mediators, you can read their blogs, watch their videos, dial into their webinars like this. And that's extremely informative because it'll help you define what you are and what you're not, right? You're looking at all these competitors and you're like, oh, I don't talk like that. No. And I don't message like that. Well, perfect. As soon as you start doing that analysis, Janice, it's going to start to inform the key word that you use to describe your story. So great question on Janice's part. We always tell our brand customers, gosh, I know you wish you would have started from zero, but it's actually really almost never happened. I mean, almost any brand you can name and prefer, person or product, they didn't start from zero and build a brand. They started building a product, adding a service, creating value, and through that continuity, started to invest in their identity and strengthen it. Good, Janice. Great question. Thank you for chiming in there. Who else has a word to say? Okay, I'll keep going. So to Janice's question about where we start with this, competitive analysis is obviously an easy task. Why? Because it turns out that the internet has kind of bridged the gap and made that research effortless and free. So I'll give you one action. In social media, most people believe that you join social media to post things. Like Jeff will post this to LinkedIn after our conversation today, probably. I want to say to all of you, you can use social media to talk. I'd rather you use it to listen, to watch, to observe, to hear the phraseology, to hear the actions and expectations of the audience and your partners. So I think if you created fake social media names and you joined Twitter and LinkedIn and you just followed other mediators, other mediation forums, other mediation societies, people looking for mediation, and observed, you didn't speak up, you didn't say, hi, I'm Lloyd. You basically just focused on listening. Social listening is an incredible research tool. Free, effortless, check it daily, check it weekly. It's a really powerful research asset. And it's just a way for you to think forward about what you are and what you want to be, just by paying attention and listening to those competitors. So that was one quick action. Another action, and we did this with Jeff, is to just find a third party, a graduate student, a colleague, someone who is not you or your family, and actually talk to past customers. You know that this might seem obvious. This is kind of the research mechanism of the day, is to talk to the buyers. But I just want to point out there that the buyers have lots to share. They will effusively tell you what it is worked or didn't work. They really appreciated your persona. They really appreciated your dialogue. They really appreciated your follow through. Now, unfortunately, because we're all in our own heads, we might not know that that is a standout trait. And that's where asking past customers, happy and sad, could really help you figure out what are those standout traits and how might they be foundational to your brand story. Good. Janice, another question. Thank you.
I'm a mediator, but I'm predominantly an arbitrator.
Okay.
That's what I spend most of my time actually doing. And how would you do that as an arbitrator? Because after you render your award, you don't have any communication with the people who appeared before you. So what would you do? And would that even be appropriate ethically?
Yes. So inevitably, there is a cutoff point where you've done the work is delivered, and the relationship has ceased. The thing that I think about, though, is that the memory has not. The memory of you has not. And so therefore, I want you to be findable when I come looking for you again. Remember, Janice, as I said earlier, I can't buy what I don't know exists. Well, I can't rehire someone I can't find. And that's the key action here is if I've had a really good experience with you, even if by law, by court demand, we don't get to discuss the case post-solution, that doesn't matter, because in a year from now, when I think about who I want to arbitrate my case or my friend's case, I want to quickly be able to remember you and quickly be able to find you. And that's the key behavior in branding is people don't buy what they can't find. And I want you to be known and found. Thank you, Janice. Good. Anyone else, feel free to raise your hand when you want to chime in. So let me share another aspect of personal branding, brand strategy that I think will be really important for you, is that I find that when I'm working with other professionals, we get to do the good work faster. What do I mean by this? Of course, every time you meet another mediator or meet another lawyer or another arbitrator, there's kind of like this moment where you're like, well, who are you and who am I and how are we going to interface? And the fact of the matter is, the more clear and intentional you are with your manifestation, the easier and faster it is for me to work with you or collaborate with you or mediate together with you. And so you think about the human experience. I mean, look at all of us on Zoom right now. This is awkward. It's frustrating. It's strange. We're in different time zones. We have different cultures, different faiths. And so anytime you meet another human, naturally, organically, there's kind of this befuddlement, like, well, wait, who is this person? Well, what branding does is it helps you as the marketer get ahead of that confusion and be intentional and clear about your persona, your energy, the angle you take, etc. And that way I can more quickly, again, collaborate or set expectation. Let me give you an example where this shows up. In an executive meeting. So imagine there's a room, a group of people are sitting around the table and the executive is the host and the facilitator, and the executive says, I may be here at the head of the table, but I'm going to speak the least. I'm excited to learn from each of you because that's where my best insights come from. Well, you get that one, it said something about that leader knows how to listen and knows their place, but it also set the tone for the meeting where everyone else was like, oh, this is not a power-hungry leader. This is a listener ready to listen. That immediately informs the productivity of the meeting. So getting back to my point simply is that by being intentional and specific about your personal brand, you literally can get more done faster with the professionals you collaborate with because they know what to expect and know who you are. Great. Well, there's so many more things to discuss today, and I have some more topics to broach and more unusual ways to engage you. I do want to make sure that Natalie and Jeff are giving me the thumbs up and don't have a question to interrupt, because I'll bring up some new topics that we haven't broached yet. All right, great. Well, just because we're all over the world and we're all tired of Zoom, I'm going to use this crazy apparatus. I don't know if you guys can see this. This is made from, my father's an orthopedic surgeon. These are external fixators. These were used in bone repair surgeries and then cleaned autoclaved, and I use them to build silly things. So here I am today showing you something, for example, that it's really interesting right now, but 9 out of 10 of our relationships in the COVID era have become primarily digital. And I thought a lot about this. I thought about, my real estate agent. I thought about my lawyer. I thought about my accountant. I thought about my banker. And I realized that yesterday I had to meet them face to face. Law defined that protocol. DocuSign wasn't good enough. And inevitably, because of isolation and COVID, now all of these relationships are not only digital. I'm going to keep them digital. I am not interested in going back to the way that it was. And so you and I, as a professional, have a sort of new hat to wear, which is, all right, well, maybe 9 out of 10 of my conversations with customers, anyone involved in this process, are going to be through this channel. How do I show up like a champion? How do I show up like I kind of know this and own this and mean this? And it might seem silly, but I suspect, when Jeff and I logged in this morning, I said, Jeff, should I put on a tie? And he's like, no, 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 I'm the attorney. Well, you know, joke's on all of you. You're putting on a costume right there. Every time you put on a tie, you're saying to someone, or anytime you're dressing up for the situation, you're saying, I hold a certain status. I am capable of a certain thing. And it works. Look at Jeff's panel. You can tell he looks like someone who means business. Well, that's an interesting ask that I have for all of you, which is if we're all going to be these sort of digital identities, these digital professional identities, how do we show up like we mean business? How do we show up like this is not just an oops, not just a, I'm waiting for the world to be vaccinated. Please, people, please. This is going to be your channel for the next 12 to 18 months. Showing up like a professional is going to require you to own this conduit. And I think that there are 5 very simple ways to do that. You'll notice as we look around the screens today, posture has a huge impact on whether I'm willing to listen to you. So I could have been doing this, you know, reclined, right? I could have been like, hey, thanks everybody. I really appreciate you joining. But no, I'm right here. My shoulders are straight. The camera is level with my eye. Okay, that's one factor. Another factor is my position in the room, position on screen. Some of you, I'm getting a head cut off version of you. I only see you from the chin up. Some of you are beautifully centered, easy to understand, easy to connect with. Beyond that, you also notice that the room that you're in is now on full broadcast. It's a little creepy. You're in my house right now. I don't know you. Well, the truth is you're sitting at a desk that was placed before COVID. And I'm going to ask you, where would you now put the desk for better lighting, for better background, so I'm not looking up at your nostrils? And it's easy, you know, put a couple books, those law school books that you don't read anymore, stack them under your laptop, lift that camera up and give me a direct eye shot. I will more believe what you say when I feel like I'm connecting with you through this channel. So those are just a couple starts, but I did want to add 2 more pieces that may feel unusual to you because you're so focused on the work you're doing. But interestingly enough, we can't just jump into these Zooms and get down to business. Have you noticed that for the first 4.5 minutes, there's all this tech fumbling that happens? There's muting and unmuting. And not only that, but all of us are going to get interrupted in about 10 seconds from somebody in our family, from the gardener. Something is going to get in the way of our professional delivery here. And that means that we can either just wait for the trauma, or we can decide what personal ingredients we are going to bring to these conversations. And I don't mean anything that would change the outcome of the case, change the outcome of your working relationship. I mean something simple like, oh my gosh, we watched a really interesting documentary on Netflix last night. Now, it may feel contrived to come to a call like this with those things already stacked, but we're looking for that from you. And so as soon as you can share that little personal nugget, it bridges the gap and helps us feel closer to you, and we're more likely to hear and listen to what you have to say. The last thing I'll point out here is that because not only are you on camera, you have your own TV show now. I don't know if you've noticed, okay? And not only that, but the fact is that these things are being recorded. And I know you're accustomed to recorded sessions, but I don't know if you're accustomed to recorded sessions like this, where not only is this going to be captured, but Jeff and Natalie are going to post this online, which means everything that you and I say, every gesture we make is now for eternity on record. And so I want to tell you quickly that who you are as a person, I hope you're ready for it to be on record. So I'm going to give you an example. I was hearing from an incredibly prestigious academic, a statist, qualified academic, giving an amazing lecture. What happened? That academic's child came in the room, and that academic unleashed on that child. And you have to ask yourself, could I even remember everything that that academic said before that moment? I forgot it all. And you know what? I left the webinar. They had brilliant, career-affecting information for me. And because of how they behaved, because of the noisy child or the noisy neighbor, I lost all respect for them and people dropped off the webinar. Now, I know that's an extreme situation, but every one of you is 5 minutes away from someone, your phone ringing or whatever, and you can decide right now, what type of human do you want to be on this broadcast? What type of human? I decided enough that when I was giving my largest broadcast to date, lots and lots of people from all over the world dialed in, my son walked in and I was ready and everything worked out beautifully. And we got 5-star reviews for the webcast because my son being on screen for 30 minutes was warm and yummy. And then we went back to business. So put it out there. I want you to think about this channel as a channel you can own. And with a little camera tweak, a little lighting orientation, you can actually show up like a category captain. And interestingly enough, right now, something very special is happening. The thing that's really happening now that I just can't put words to is that you and I used to be defined by our resume, our list of long credentials. And now, take that beautiful list of credentials, all the amazing education and experience, there's now a new leading credential, which is, oh, wow, this person really knows how to show up in this channel. They can really resonate within this creepy rectangle. And the more you're using this forum, the more you're going to realize that the mediators of yesterday who had the longest list of mediations may not be the one that is picked now. The ones that get picked, the arbitrators that may get picked, might be the ones who can use this channel like a master and show up like they mean business and represent and affect the case effectively. So I wanted to put that out there because to me that's exciting. To me it's thrilling to be able to have that type of control. So I wanted to give you an action. The action is pretty simple, and you tell me differently. You know, I suspect that your cases have specificities that require you to be present in certain respects. But I just want to say right now, what I'm witnessing in every category, who's succeeding, thriving, creating new incomes, those that have converted and understood that right now, this is about remote leading, or about remote selling, and about remote telling or teaching. So I don't know if you know, but I'm a professor at 3 business schools. And I'm having a moral conflict with my other professors because the other professors can't wait to go back in the classroom. And I'm like, what are you going to wait? Are you going to wait 18 months before you get back in the classroom? Or are you going to acknowledge that right now, remote teaching is the vehicle? And instead of being apologetic about it or feeling weak at it, how about owning it and controlling it and defining it like a champion? So the first ask is for you to recognize that your duties likely will remain partially remote, and showing up like you know what you're doing within that remote channel is going to give you some wins. But the thing that I have forced on my customers and graduate students is the person who's going to be buying from you, they're likely going to buy from you based on an experience like this. There may be a face-to-face meeting, there may be a distance document handoff, but they're going to meet you through this channel. They're going to interact with you multiple times through this channel, and they're ultimately going to choose you through this channel. And that means you need to show up like a remote seller. My last and most important point on this card is, though, that people are learning through this channel. I don't know how many webinars you're attending on the regular, but people are kind of opening emails and clicking like they never did before. Give me a head nod if you've watched a webinar in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, almost all of us. Okay, so there we go. So we're all gorging ourselves on this intellect. Well, what's awesome, much like Jeff and Natalie are doing right now, instead of selling themselves, they're teaching. They're teaching, not selling. And through that teaching, you get special permissions. You get to invite colleagues that may be competitors. You get to invite customers to observe the dialogue. And so remote selling, leading, and teaching are the 3 key ingredients to ensure success in a COVID refined era. Good, I'll pause here for feedback or a question. Go ahead,
Okay,
Jeff.
okay, Sasha. So the distinction between selling and teaching, and how we manage to get back onto the safe side of the zone if we feel we've gone out of bounds, because in our eagerness to develop business and to have people hire us, it's easy to come on too strong sometimes. So how do we prevent it, and how do we cure it if we sense it happening?
Really good question, and I'm sorry that there was audio issue there. So Jeff, to your question about selling, I do want everyone to realize that if you want to control your income future, you must be a salesperson. And I don't mean yesterday's used car salesperson. Remember, someone is looking for mediation. Someone is looking for arbitration, and they need help choosing. And therefore, you leaning in, communicating effectively, being direct and intentional with your dialogue is going to help them. So I want you to decouple sales from manipulation, decouple it from distortion or price gouging. That's not how I sell. The way I look at selling is someone's got a problem that I am uniquely capable of fixing. I need to help them know that that's available. And that's why I've given myself that permission to sell. But to answer Jeff's question, the one catch I do make, as soon as I'm coming on too strong, I shift to educator. I shift immediately in my head. I say, whoa, Sasha, don't come at them telling them they need to buy this thing. Help them understand their situation. Help them understand people like them in similar situations. Help them understand the process that this sequence requires. And by me calling myself into question and pushing myself back to the educator role, I've protected myself from being from selling too hard.
So, Sasha, are there some good questions that we can ask people to try to draw out information that will allow us to do that education? What are some good questions to ask people?
Well, why don't I play this out in my branding world, and then you can sort of relate to it as it attaches to what you do. So, for example, I ask questions like, "Oh, well, have you been a part of a mediation before?" Simple. Where did you learn about mediation? What resources do you turn to now? Or can you describe the process of mediation to me? These sort of naive, like, welcome into the kitchen types of conversations, like, what do you want for dinner? That actually gives people the permissions to wander. And for those of you who are expert salespeople, by the time you've gotten someone to answer 2 questions, they're ready for a 3rd question. You could start talking to them about much other things, like, how do you hope this will turn out? What hiccups or roadblocks do you foresee might be a challenge to a successful mediation on your part? And those seemingly naive questions are really permissions for them to explain how much they know or don't know. And that's where I find myself not over-explaining or under-explaining, but simply serving the capability of the individual. And by the way, I suspect that when someone joins and says, "Oh, hi, Anthony, yes, I know everything there is to know about mediation, don't bother." You're smiling because you know that there are plenty of things that they don't know, and you querying and asking kind questions that would get them to reveal what they don't know is going to help them bond to you and feel like, wow, this is the kind of person I want on my team.
Can I ask a question?
Please, yes,
Yeah.
Anthony.
First of all, I just want to say, absolutely fantastic. I'm so thrilled that to be on this call with you.
Thank you so much.
I've got a couple of questions. So, first of all, and this is probably a stupid technical question, but I noticed that everybody here, like me, has a head that's kind of like a small head in the middle of their screen, but you have a very large head, and it really makes an effect. And I'm just wondering how you do that. Do you have a special Zoom camera?
Are you making fun of my genetic architecture and the size
No,
of my brain? I'm totally
just
messing
saying,
with you. Anthony, so yes, I've done a couple things. Thank you so much for asking this question. So let me tell you first, I have a separate microphone attached to my laptop. It's only $100. It's very small and easy to use. One thing that's done is it's helped me back away from my laptop a little bit instead of me being sort of squeezed into it. That's one thing. Okay. Next thing is that I also have a lamp, a janky desk lamp that I put behind my computer to cast out a little bit of light and light me up a little bit. So maybe that's another factor, is that I'm really, really well lit. Okay. Other thing that is helping you a little bit is I also have an external camera. I think it costs like $60, and I plug it right into my laptop into the USB port, and it's put right here, and it has much better resolution, and I can control where it's placed. You notice that the camera in your laptop is like attached to your working hardware. Like, how are you supposed to use this intuitively? And so a separate camera with a separate microphone will really help you square up nicely. That's one thing that I've also sort of utilized. And another thing that is kind of important to me is that I get on the webinars in advance, depending on the time of day. So right now I'm in Los Angeles. The sun is just coming into my windows. I actually adjusted the light in the room so that I would come out really, really clearly here. So many different things I recommended, Anthony, from everything from external camera and external microphone, all these things you can find on Amazon and have tomorrow, to external light to really kind of ensure that I can easily see you. If you think about it, Anthony, your camera right now is trying to calculate for low light. It's trying to, so that work makes it pixelated on my end. I'm actually losing a little bit of clarity, and I want to see your lips move. If you're a communicator for a living, I really want to see you enunciate those words. And so a little bit of lift on your part could help a lot.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, I have one other question, and I don't want to
please.
hog your time. You talked about your office there for a second, and I'm wondering, what do you think about virtual backgrounds? So I've got mine that I use, and it
Perfect.
kind of takes the
Good.
place of, the office.
Let's all talk about this. I don't want to bias the convo. So who has a say about virtual backgrounds? Quick, anyone else with a comment on Anthony's virtual backgrounds question? Yes, Janice.
As arbitrator, I don't use them because I don't allow parties to use them because it could hide who else is in the room, and confidentiality is a very important aspect of that. So that's just from that perspective, not the pros and cons of how they look.
Really great insight, folks. I think that that's categorically relevant to each of you to think that, wow, this might imply that something is being hidden. Good. So that's one factor, Anthony, is that I don't know what's going on behind you. Who else has a comment about these digital backgrounds? Okay, I'll mention one quickly, which is I'm constantly distracted by the twitching that happens around your profile. And I've seen even people with green screens and good lighting, the camera, the technology, it's just not ready yet. It's just not ready to manage it. Now let's take your room, Anthony. Your room is personal. It's spacious. I like the artwork on the back. I like the lamp. The paperwork on the desk over your right shoulder, that might be something worth moving. That blue pillow, awesome. It adds a little depth and color. You don't have a bad space. And remember, because we're all forced into this circumstance where we're working from home, there is a little space for me to want to feel connected to you, to want to feel like, wow, I'm working directly with this person. So let's take Natalie here, Natalie's background. You see that she's interestingly positioned on screen, right? She's just slightly off to the side. That adds interesting framing. She's very, very well lit, but see her background motif? It's not so prominent that you're distracted by it. You can't actually read the book titles. Cool. You see that she looks like she owns it. She looks like she's in control of it. And that's what I'm working for. That's what I'm trying to get to. Anthony, already better. Did you just open a window?
I opened the blinds, yes. I was in
the resolution already just went up 10%. Okay, good. See, so to give you full disclosure on this room, this is a guest room. And then COVID crashed and I was like, guess we're not having any guests. So I put a desk in here and I wedged the desk, not where I normally would put it, but I put it in a COVID career position with windows facing me this direction with a back wall that I can use to ideate or stimulate or whatever the case might be. And I tell you, Anthony, it's really, really helped me feel like I've got my stuff together. I'm together, I'm control. You want to have a call right now, client? Boom, light is on, camera's ready, eye level, let's talk. And it's really affected our conversations. And so I hope that you'll take a little of this into consideration. You're already pretty good, but centered, elevated, well lit with a controlled background. And I think you're really going to look like a master.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Please, my pleasure. You know, one thing, Anthony, that I wanted to bring up just because it's relevant to your question is this game I play with my graduate students called Before COVID, During COVID, and After COVID. You know, I totally remember us doing our jobs before COVID. You remember your job before COVID, and it's fun to reflect on it, but the fact is that that's not how we work now. So I've helped my graduate students by saying, look, there's this really strange window here. It's back 7 months plus forward 18 months. That is the during COVID era of professional identity. Well, that means you get to do special certain things. You know, Larry and Chuck and Jeff are wearing headphones. You know, that's great. Vikram's wearing headphones. Like, that is totally fine in this channel because during COVID, we realized that we need these special tools. But what I'm pushing on all of you is how you show up during COVID is going to directly inform how known and powerful you are after COVID. Each of the goodwill, hard work actions you invest in right now is going to blossom into something amazing after we all make it through this insanity. And so I want you to kind of, anytime you hearken back, or gosh, I wish I had just, that's the before COVID you just write it off. And right now you have full control over this situation where you can do the during COVID you, and all you're doing is setting up opportunity for what will be the after COVID you. And this has really helped me kind of shake off my legacy behaviors and look to the future. And really, I personally want to be an example. I want to be an example to my customers and my grad students about someone who didn't let COVID ruin their career, but helped, used COVID to catalyze their growth. And this framework has really helped that conversation. So far, so good? Yeah, we learning stuff? Okay, cool. Let me give you a couple other things that might really help you. This is an interesting conversation I've been having with my students, which is the way that we worked in the past was fine because there was so much going on. We were all just like, overwhelmed by the number of channels, the number of resources, the number of behavior. Many of you who used to commute, gosh, you remember the drive and oh my gosh. Okay, so all that's different now. And so now we're sitting in a situation where here, Jeff Chavin, famous mediator, wants to market himself, and he could buy ads. He could say, hey, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, but he knows that that's not going to convert the customer. And so he decides that he's going to put together a webinar series, a productive, engaging dialogue amongst peers. So far, we're all kind of okay with this.
With Natalie, with Natalie,
absolutely with Natalie. And we're all seemingly okay with this. Why? Because we are not just being sold to. What did Natalie and Jeff do? Oh, this is part of a food bank donation program where we're all contributing and affecting the world's population. Well, what they are doing is what I'm asking you to do, which is you no longer just get to be the professional you. You have to work like an impactor. I need to know how your mastery, specialty, expertise is also helping the world. Let me give you an example with my work. So as you know, we're a branding firm. 10% of our clients are nonprofits. The other 90% are big corporations, high revenue generating institutions, religions, universities. But 10% of the time, we're using our core competency in brand strategy to help nonprofits. That's working like an impactor. And what has this done for my recruiting? Through the roof. What has it done for my customer uptake in a competitive era? They're like, we want to choose you because you care. So feel it like it's contrived if you want, but the fact is that nonprofits and people without resources need mediators and arbitrators like you. You doing that once a month, leading an educational forum, et cetera, is going to do really, really good work for how we perceive you. So that's the first thing. So that's work like an impactor. The next thing that's super interesting is that because, for example, the courts are closed and now we can email signed documents and there's all these behavior changes happening in the legal space, you kind of get this really unique career opportunity to what I call enterprise like a maker. Anthony, it keeps getting better. It's so good. I really appreciate that you're centering yourself and the lighting is right. It really helps me connect with you. So back to this enterprising like a maker. So you had your routine processes yesterday, and then everything got upheaved, and now there are new ways of submitting documents, new ways of managing protocol. That's awesome. That means that for the first time in your career, you get the chance to kind of adapt the thing, adapt the process, adapt the document sharing and management flow. And that should be inspiring and interesting to you. But the last piece that I'll ask on this card is to remember this is not a 3-month waiting game. Folks, I sure hope you do not wake up every day and say to yourself, all right, let's see if I can get through this day as a professional. Hopefully there'll be a tomorrow. That's a very short-sighted, a very dark way to look at your career. The people who are progressing have their heads up, they're looking out, and they're asking themselves, great, what am I going to do for the next 12 months? How am I going to do this job to maximum levels for the next 12 months, 18 months? Let's discuss that for a second. Who's thinking about the long game right now? Who's putting their practice together, not for this month, but for the next year? Good, hands up, beautiful, excellent. This is the right group of people here. Lloyd, Larry, I want to see your hands next. I really want you to be thinking deeply about how, even though we are hearing about vaccines, let's just say we try to vaccinate American. How long will it take for us to vaccinate 350 million people? All right, or let's take, how long is it going to take? You get it. This isn't going to be tomorrow. And that means that we as professionals need to show up in this channel like we are fine with it. And that's why I really want you to be thinking about the 12 to 18 month plan. So what do I want you to think about as it relates to that? The digital file process, excuse the crazy doodle here. This says breadcrumbs of your value. So you'll notice that as you're using document sharing tools, Asana, Slack, Teams, Zoom, Google Cloud, etc., that every single chat, comment, and document is now directly tied to you. And I know that, legally documents had your signature on them before, But what's so interesting about the digital way of doing business now, how you actually name the file says something about you. How in control and aware you are says something about you. How you make comments under the certain video clips. Well, because they're all part of these new technology enterprise systems we're all storing our data in the cloud, these things now become breadcrumb trails. They point directly at you and what it's like to work with you. And so what I've encouraged my clients to think about is that it's not only about the Zoom, it's about the after Zoom and the documents and files you're forwarding, and how each of those documents, the way that they're named, the way that you describe them, those are now permanent digital breadcrumb trails that define my perception of you. Well, it looks like we've got about 10 minutes. Is that right, Natalie? Yeah? Okay. Well, I don't want to push you too hard, too fast, but I do want to close out with one crazy concept, and then we'll take Erlene. Okay, I'll take your question first, and then I'll close out with the crazy concept. Oh, you're on mute, honey. You're on mute.
And yeah,
Perfect.
this is my question. I noticed that you're using some very effective visual aids, and I wonder if you could do the same thing with screen share during a webinar.
Great, good question. So you'll notice that as I started speaking, Natalie did not say, okay, everybody, here comes Sasha's PowerPoint presentation. You'll notice if I had a PowerPoint presentation up, you would only see me as like a little stamp, right? So I decided that as a people interactor, that's my profession, that's your profession, that actually holding court in staying in control through this is more important to me. And that's why I built this silly contraption. And I'll tell you, I've used cards like this for some very powerful conversations with the world's leading CEOs, and they have the same reaction that you do, which is, it's so nice to not have to look at some PowerPoint slide that was built 12 months before COVID. Every one of you has been on the receiving end of a PowerPoint presentation that was built before this channel. And it doesn't work. It's patronizing. It feels like rinky-dink. And so to answer your question, I do use PowerPoints, Arlene, in my classes. I do use them in my consulting, but I don't say, oh, thank you for joining. Okay, here's the PowerPoint, boom. And then for the entire 60 minutes, you're looking at a PowerPoint screen with a postage stamp of me. I turn the presentation on and off. I'll make 3 slide points, and then I'll pull the presentation down and then talk, and then I'll pull it back up. And that's really, really helped the students and executives stay engaged.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Well, cool. What I was going to show you quickly, just because some of us are not thinking about this a lot, is the world of virtual reality and augmented reality. I know that you're probably thinking about like video gaming and stuff like that. I do want to point out that many organizations that have, let's say, 20,000 employees and above who are hiring, 100 people a month, their employee onboarding and training protocol going forward is going to take place in virtual reality goggles. And if you've never tried them on, they are a little disorienting, but once you have worn them, you are astounded by how well this works. I suspect that's where mediation is going. I suspect that because it's hard to get humans together, that there will be some future in mediation that takes place in these virtual worlds. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 12 months, but I would love it if each of you has like a little antenna up where you are staying cutting edge in your category because you're thinking about where this might go and how you might do this in a virtual world. It looks like Janice has an example, please.
It's very funny that you mentioned that, because I'm on the AAA Emerging Technologies panel. And one of the things I'm actually writing an article right now about is using emerging technology like predictive analytics and augmented reality in the dispute resolution context and dispute prevention context specifically, like how to avoid disputes before you have to resolve them. And I'm going to give a presentation on dispute prevention for Natalie and Jeff at the end of this month. But I just thought that was wonderful that you're thinking ahead, because when I first talk about that, people are kind of like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You're crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Janice, thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and we're all excited to learn from you at the end of the month. It's so great to hear that you're thinking about these things. Just to contextualize this for all of you, UC Berkeley had its graduation despite COVID, and it took place in a virtual world. Yeah. The largest companies in the world have annual conferences that they spend millions of dollars in attending. They're not having those conferences. They're using those millions of dollars to forward their virtual reality, augmented reality content and experience. And so if we stay close to folks like Janice and just really ensure that we're not getting left behind in our category, there could be a whole new second career future for each of you in these virtual worlds of dialogue. Excellent. Cool. Well, we have about 5 more minutes, and I'm not rushing away from you. I'm happy to be in touch post-conversation, but I do want to make sure that if there are follow-up or last questions before we leave, we get to them.
Questions?
Yes, Lloyd, please.
You talk about what one's perception of the next 12 months will be like. Do you think about rewriting a business plan, or even thinking about a business plan as we used to think about business plans?
Thank you, Lloyd. Yes. Not in a business plan, because the 3-year vision is impractical. It doesn't make sense. The way that I've been thinking about my business plan is 12 to 18 months. In fact, I have a little card that I use to force myself to think about it. Like, it's just a calendar. It just says, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and that's what I've been using. I basically have been thinking about how, okay, are we going to go back to traveling? Yes. Are we going to go back to traveling like you and I used to travel? I used to be on 3 airplanes a week. Anybody else? No. Okay. I don't think that's going to happen. It didn't make economic sense. Our time is too valuable. But are we going to travel for cases, for special face-to-face meetings? We are. And so my business plan has a hybrid future. It has a offline and online component where I look at both of them as complementary, not preferred. I don't prefer one or the other. So right now, Lloyd, with my coworkers, I have 25 employees in the firm that I built and founded. We have weekly stand-up meetings in this digital environment. We have monthly all company meetings in this digital environment. And now we're working on putting together a remote gathering every quarter where we can kind of come together at a distance and experience each other, see each other's faces, smile, throw water balloons. But to really help you think about this tactically, one of the things that we have also been doing is once a month, we're mailing our coworkers a physical thing. So for example, with RBG's death, we sent everyone a handmade candle. They didn't open the box until we were all dialed into the same Zoom call. We opened the candle, we put up a photo of RBG, and we all lit our candles at home and stood in silence on screen for 90 seconds. Now, I couldn't do that in pre-COVID, but during COVID, it was exactly what we all needed. And that's an answer to your question, Lloyd. My business plan has a kind of a hybrid engagement future to it, where I know there will be high value face-to-face sessions. I know that there will be daily monotonous digital sessions, and I'm trying to find a place for both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd.
Sasha, what are creative ways you've seen people stay in touch with clients where it's not the, we all get calls from stockbrokers and realtors,
Oh my gosh.
quote unquote, just calling to see how you're doing. And you think, you don't care how I'm doing. You just want to list my house for sale.
I'm so glad you asked this question, and this is worth our last 2 minutes. Here we go, folks. So I have a client that serves bankruptcy attorneys, Chapter 7 and Chapter 11, and they build the software that those attorneys use to run their practices and manage their cases. And in bankruptcy, there's lots of cash in float, billions kind of sitting in between the parties, and so it's a big business. So classically, Jeff, the way that they sold, they had an expensive conference where expensive people stayed in an expensive hotel and attended an expensive summit. And that was how they did their business development. Okay, COVID came, and I'm so thrilled to tell you what they decided. They were like, wow, God, we have to sell. I mean, what are we going to do? Okay, well, who comes to our events? Well, people from private equity come, lawyers come, court people come. Okay. Well, can we still get them together? Well, how are we going to get them together? What if we find a sommelier, a wine person, and we ship the same bottle of wine to 10 people? They get invited to a private Zoom where the 10 of us with the sommelier open the bottle, taste it, smell it, whatever you wine people do, and then have an open conversation about the wine, our preferences. So that sounded crazy. Trust me, that executive got a lot of flack. The wine events are so successful that they have run out of them. The sommelier won't do anymore. They're having one every week, and they've had one every week for the last 3 months. They needed more sales channels, more opportunities. So guess what? They're like, what can we do after wine? So they decided, all right, people are stuck at home. Some of these attorneys and private equity folks, their kids are showing up on screen. What if we send them bakery materials? We're going to do baking. We're going to hire a pastry chef, a Michelin-rated pastry chef to do a Zoom baking thing. And you attorneys can come and join and bring your kids, and we're going to bake. Guess what, Janice? They ran out of slots in the baking session. They moved to their third process. And just to be clear, these things are happening constantly now. They went from annual conferences to every week having a special curated personal experience. Well, what do you do when you run out of wine and bakery goods? They chose a very American answer. They're now shipping steaks, preserved steaks that you barbecue together on screen with your other high-power bankruptcy attorney colleagues. So why am I saying all of this? They're not doing some novel internet campaign with a whiz-bang video and excellent graphics. They went back to you and I, everyone on this call. We are humans doing business with humans. How do we keep that human connection despite this distance? Well, we don't just talk about business. We come up with excuses to talk where business happens to come up. And those are the kinds of things, those are the kinds of sales meetings people wait in line to attend. And you're on mute there, Jeff.
Fantastic. Any last questions that we have? Okay.
Just a fantastic thank you for sharing all of that. It was really, really helpful and brilliant. Thank you.
My honor, my pleasure. Please, thank you for the interest and the attention. And I hope we get another chance to do so.
Indeed, Sasha. Thank you. And thank you so much for your mention of Sova, part of Jewish Family Services of Los Angeles, www.jfsla.org. We encourage people to contribute there in your honor or to a food bank of their choice in their own local communities. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. Natalie, any final words, please?
Only, as always, to say thank you so much for helping us put this this message and this program together, Sasha. Really well done, inspirational, and thanks also for mentioning Sova. And if we hope, of course, we hope that everyone can donate, but we also want you to know that if you're the person who is worried with food insecurity, Sova is a great place for you to find some resources.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, one and all, and with that, we are complete.
I do
Bye-bye.
have one, excuse me, I do have one question. Natalie, would you repeat that that information which you just gave?
For Sova, the website is www.jf, like Jewish family, sla.org. jfsla.org. Jewish Family Services Los Angeles.org.
Thank you.
You're welcome, John.
Thank you.
Great organization, John. Excited for you to engage.
Okay, and oh yes, Sasha, I'm glad that you spoke. Thank you for spending that hour with us, and also Jeff, you have asked some very pertinent questions that were very helpful to me. So Natalie, again, thanks for making this. Thanks for making everything possible, and I will be looking to take Jeff. I'll be looking forward to take Jeff and Sasha's job in the next 2 weeks.
Excellent. And John, you'll be presenting to us in a few weeks as well, won't you? And
yes, I will. And I'm actually looking very much forward to it.
As are we. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
All right, my friends. Thanks.